This video was sponsored by Skillshare. The first 1,000 people who click the link in my description can claim a 1-month free trial to Skillshare Premium. Hello, craftsmen and calisthenics instructors. My name is TV's Guy, and I'm back. I am alive again. I've been moving house over the past month and a bit, and it's been taking up all my time, so I haven't been able to make much in the way of videos, but I've got my computer set up, I have a microphone, and I can record things now, so I figure I should probably do that. And my god, Riot provided me with a thing to talk about, which is quite lovely, which is The Call, the 2022 season opening cinematic. That's sort of the tone setter for the season, setting up all the stuff that's going to be happening, teasing future storylines, continuing a few previous ones, doing all that good stuff. If you want to know about the specific lore of what's happening, I'll probably touch on it during the video. Nicrit probably has a video going much more in-depth with that already by the time this thing comes out. So what I want to talk about is the animation, which has been crafted by Unit Image or Uni-Image, depending on how French you want to be about it, which is an animation studio that does a absolute crap ton of really high quality work. I think they've done work for God of War, Love, Death and Robots. I think they did one of the trailers for Elden Ring, actually. And they've worked with Riot on a bunch of stuff before, Legends of Runeterra things, trailers, things like that. And they're a very accomplished and well-respected animation house, and they're responsible for the animation in this thing. And my god, what a job they have done. Because this is a far cry from the animation aesthetic of your, for example, Arcanes, and it's certainly also a far cry from the animation aesthetic that Riot employs in a lot of other places in the League of Legends universe. Why do I have hiccups now? First time I'm recording in a month and I get hiccups. It's something that I won't call it realistic because it really isn't. It's highly stylized and it's very, very, very fantasy, but it's a visual style that is somewhat more grounded in realism-ish looks. Like, there's a lot of sort of very highly rendered lighting effects, lots of effects work. The way that the camera operates is sort of like the way you see blurring around the edges and things. Like, it's all very grounded in stuff that looks like real cinematography. This shot, for example, where Ornn quenches the sword and you get this lovely plume of bubbles rising up off of it. Like, that looks sort of hyper-realistic almost, and of course Ornn himself is also rendered with, like, itty-bitty tiny individual little mustache hairs in his adorable grumpy goat face. That stuff is all sort of realistically grounded, but then there are the things that are very much not, which are things like, for example, not just the fantastical features like the man with the bear head, but things like highly stylized anatomy, the way that lighting works, which is like crafted and not actually naturalistic. It's something that's designed specifically to look dramatic and not necessarily to look the way that it would look under realistic circumstances, which is normal. But let's talk about animation. And we open with a tone setter for the thing, which is Ornn, who's sort of the framing mechanic for this whole thing. Like, we cut back to Ornn a few times over the course of this thing. And so what's happening here is that Ornn is forging a sword, right? Like, he's making a weapon, he's forging a sword. So here we have this pool being filled with fire, right? Like, that's him pouring molten metal into the mold that's gonna make the blade of the thing, presumably. But we have this heat of fire, this fiery passion, and like he holds it up and you can see like it's glowing red hot with power and energy inside. And from there, he then puts the first blow down on and with this spark of fire. And that leads us into our introductions to the five arguably main characters that we're dealing with in this short, which is first Sejuani and her Winter's Claw band, supported by Olaf trudging along there behind her. Then we get a lovely match cut that I really, really like, which is this one, which is where we cut from the frozen tundras of the mountains of the Freljord to this rag lying on the sandy ground somewhere in Shurima. And do you notice the clever little thing that they do here? They do what's, I believe in film studies terms, is called a match cut, which is to say you create a composition in the image that from one cut to the other matches a lot of the shapes and sort of the visual identity of the image. So, for example, this cloth that's lying on the ground has exactly pretty much, or not exactly, but pretty much the same, follows the curves of the shapes of the mountain right here. And this little slit in the cloth, this little hole, matches visually exactly where the canyon in this cliff that the Winter's Claw are walking towards. So you get this affinity between these two shots where, like, cutting from one to the other doesn't feel quite as jarring as it otherwise would. It creates a visual connection between these two things. And that's important because these three different scenes are all acting out things that revolve around that central theme, which is Orn, like, filling up this vessel with a fire of passion. And then, well, we'll see what happens next. But we cut to here in Shurima, where we're hanging out with Talia, my favorite girl, and Kaisa, not my favorite girl, who otherwise have had a lovely little lore update that I hope you've all read, where they meet in Shurima as Talia is trying to lead a bunch of orphans to some place that might theoretically be safe for them to be, and they've settled on this legendarily dead city somewhere in the northern deserts of Shurima, and they run into Kaisa, who's like, no, that place is full of void creatures and they're gonna kill you all, fuck off. But eventually it's like, buddy comedy. Not so much a comedy, but they work out their differences and become friends, and it's lovely, and it's very cool. And Kaisa, she is looking better than she has in a long time, which I do appreciate. Une Image, like, there's clearly a little bit of a consciousness at Une Image that Kaisa's like, doesn't look much like she's someone who's infested with a void parasite from an alternate dimension in her base form. So, like, we're gonna make some texture choices to make her look a little bit more plausibly like something alien. So they've done a lot of stuff, like giving this, like, really leathery, weird, sort of chitinous, insectoid, sometimes texture, like these weird tensions between different kinds of organic material overlaying her, which works very well. It's still undercut somewhat by the fact that she has plucked eyebrows and lipstick and, well, but looks like lipstick anyway, and like mascara and eyeshadow, which I don't know why she has that, but that's a character design complaint, doesn't really have anything to do with the animation. But they've come to this place, this dead city, and this shot here is a little bit of important setup because the lady there, who's at this point, I think we're broadly assuming that this is going to be the next Void champion, or at least going to be heavily related to the next Void champion in some way or another. Because the next Void champion is promising to be the first, well, not the first, is promising to be an intelligent Void creature, or at least a creature that has more sentience than the rest of them. And is going to be like a swarm queen thing, who is actually in direct conflict with someone else who's going to show up later. We'll talk about that one once they show up. But this is an establishing shot, sort of setting the scene. This is where we are. These are the things that are around here. And, oh, hey, big giant statue with a conspicuous slash right through the face so you can't see who she is. That's interesting. And then we get, like, this clever little thing of, like, this whatever this is that we could just kind of, it's just some rubble or whatever. All of a sudden it's like, oh no, that's the fin. Like, that's a shark fin, essentially, as it begins to shift through the earth and move towards these two potential unsuspecting victims. And we get this, like, we see these trails of them as the rek'sai are closing in on our two protagonists down here. So, like, we get the setup for what's going on here in the same way that we do with Sejuani and the Winter's Claw, where, like, what we get here is, like, we get the setup of, like, Bristle, who is Sejuani's boar, pokes his big, gorgeous snout into the frame, and we see Sejuani, she's, like, looking back, and then she looks forward, goes, yeah, and drives them forward. So, like, we go, okay, she's, like, looking back for her people, so she's the leader. We understand this, because these shorts, of course, they're crafted to appeal to people who have never played League of Legends. Like, they're crafted to be like, oh, shit, who are those cool characters? What's that cool shit? I want to play League of Legends so I can find out, and you shouldn't, because you won't, because League of Legends doesn't have any lore in the game. You should play Legends of Runeterra instead. But we get this setup shot showing very clearly, okay, Sejuani is the leader, here's her warband, then we have this conspicuously extremely large guy who's like, okay, that seems like probably her biggest warrior or whatever, and they are trekking towards whatever this is, which, by the nature of all of the spikes and, like, the mountain that's been cut in two, is obviously an ominous place full of deadly fantasy things that are going to try to murder them. So, like, okay, we get it. They're on a quest to go in there because of some whatever. And here, we have a very different establishing shot, because this is Talia. They're arriving in this legendarily lost city that was supposed to be safe, but isn't, because it's full of void creatures. And she picks up this discarded cloth on the ground, and sort of looks at it sadly, and you sort of get, oh, okay, that cloth belonged to a person, but that person is probably dead and or gone, and then you get the reassuring hand of Kaisa on her shoulder, sort of going, okay, she's trying to comfort her because she's, like, this one's trying to comfort that one because they're sad because of whoever owned this cloth is dead, probably. Like, that's stuff you sort of just pick up from the visual language that's being employed here. And by the way, Talia, my girl! Oh, thank God they didn't change your nose. Oh. And this little gesture is also important for another reason, because like I said, Uni-Image have done, or Unit Image, however you pronounce it, have done a good job of making Kaisa look decidedly like more weird and alien and kind of scary. In a lot, like, not, she's still obviously just a hot girl in spandex, but it's like, so having that reassuring hand on the shoulder is like, oh, okay, this is not a monster that's gonna try and stab her in the back. This is like, oh, this is a friend. They're friends. They're good with each other, so they're cool. Okay, don't worry about that. These two are friends somehow, for some reason. So as an uninitiated person, you sort of understand the relationship between these two. And by the way, Talia's older than Kaisa. Can you believe that? It's very cool. Where were we? Right. Then we see Talia has released the cloth that she picked up, and it flies off, zooms up here into frame, and then we get another match cut, because we get this other little bit of affinity. We cut on movement here, though, which is to say, like, something moves into the frame, or there's a movement happening in the frame, and then you cut, and then you match that movement in the next scene that you're cutting to in order to create a strong flow between them. Again, creating that connection between first Sejuani and her warband, and then these two on their quest, and then we create a connection between their quest and the quest of our next contender, whomst is Pantheon, with the cloth. And you can see there's a lot of, I download these things off of YouTube, and I can't use the 4K version because it's encoded in AV01, which Premiere Pro doesn't want to accept. So this is where we cut to like some leaves flying up, so like we get this matching movement, almost as though that piece of cloth has flown up and transformed into the leaves that move, as the camera pans over, and we get this fucking hand. And we're gonna spend some time talking about this fucking hand, because first of all, just take a look at it. Like, my God, the number of polygons they put on this man. I don't know if that's necessarily how many polygons his hand has on every single shot, probably, but, you know, who knows. But the thing I want to talk about specifically is you pay attention to the skin and the way things move under it. As he sort of, like, he's gripped onto the ground and to push himself up, pay attention to this section right here. There. That. You see that shit? Do you see that shit right there? Do you see that motherfucking shit right there? Do you see the things that are happening? There's some fucking cool things happening here. I'm gonna zoom in on those things so you can see the cool things that are happening. Because this shit, no, this is something that most people probably won't get that excited for, but this shit, oh, that's the good shit. Look at that. Look at, as the bracer pushes down on his arm, and you can sort of try this yourself, really. As he pushes down on his arm, and like the skin gets squeezed, it also squeezes the blood away from the blood vessels, which pales the skin a little bit. And then also it, like, because it pushes up these ridges and the light is coming from up here, we get these edge lightings that fall on those little folds of flesh as they get pushed forward by the bracer. And you can see, like, even the hairs on the surface of his hand, like the pores get opened up a little bit, the hairs get pushed forward, and everything just kind of shifts. Like, you can see that shift happening underneath the skin, like rippling out throughout the entirety of the hand. And you can see, like, as he places more and more tension in the fingers, like the way that, like, these little muscles and things, like how it all just like shifts and adjusts to sort of showcase, like, okay, he's moving, he's doing something. Like, these muscles and tendons and this sinew underneath is being engaged by the action of what's happening in order to push this man forward. And like, just the sheer amount of body mechanics that are going on here. Like, this is unnecessary. You don't have to do this. Like, you just put a hand on the thing and push him up. You don't have to simulate his fucking blood vessels, but these motherfuckers, they did it anyway, because a little bit extra, and also because that's part of the visual style of the thing. Now, I don't know, like, I'm not super up on the exact capabilities of, like, modern animation software. I don't know how much of this is handled through simulation. Like, you define a rig and you create all the necessary points and tell it, okay, like, render this flesh reacting to this push in such and such way. I don't know how much of that is simulation, but just getting that right, like, making that look real and realistic, the way that, like, the skin ripples, and you can even see here, like, as he's pushing up, like, he grabs the ground, and then you can see he swivels around, like, the pivot point of his own wrist. You can see how the whole arm turns, because he's grabbed onto it, and then he's pulling down, and you can see how, like, he's rotating the arm as he moves the rest of his body up over it. And that's just, like, that's some fantastic fucking body mechanics, where you can kind of infer the movement of the whole body just from the way that this little bit of arm is wiggling around, and there's little details, like, here, look at this finger as he grabs onto the ground. Tension. And then you can see how it kind of relaxes a little bit, like as he stops pulling himself up and starts pushing himself up. This finger relaxes, and these fingers relax because they're no longer gripping onto the ground, as instead it becomes more of a pushing motion. And then you can see it again, like how the tension reasserts itself right there in those little tiny joints as like he begins to push himself up. Like this is just like unnecessarily detailed animation, but I do appreciate it. It's quite lovely. I do wish I didn't have to work with these fucking YouTube compressed guys. I'm just going, but them's the breaks. That's the world we live in, my friends. And a lovely little bit of cinematography here, as you can see, like as Pantheon raises his face up into frame, you can see that like there's something in front of him, whatever it is, a ridge or whatever, some conveniently placed object, is casting a little bit of a shadow over his face until, like, we finally get this shot of, like, this reveal of when his eyes come out. That's when a beam of sunlight or starlight or whatever is available on Targon sort of catches across his face and reveals, like, those, like, dark-rimmed eyes. And real men, as we know, wear that much eyeshadow, because fucking looks badass. And again, he's pushing himself up. And that's also part of, like, the thing with Pantheon is that he has to fight for every step. Like, as he ascends this mountain, you get the sense from everything that happens with him is like, it's like, you can see it here, right? Like how he takes in a breath and exhales. And you can see, like, how he kind of has to steel himself for the next step, because it's not easy for him. He has access to a certain amount of power, but the whole point of Pantheon is that he is just a human man, like, who has some extraordinary powers available, but who's not, like, superhuman in the traditional sense. This shot, by the way, download the video in 4K, screenshot this shit and put it on your monitor, because this is just fully a wallpaper shot right there. As again, we see Pantheon, much like Sejuani, much like Kajsa and Talia, is questing for something. Like, Kajsa and Talia were questing for this lost city with the statue in it. Sejuani and company are questing for the mountain. Pantheon is questing for this thing right here. That's the fire of passion that is driving them. That's their objective. That's the thing Orn filled in at the very start of the thing, is like, this is the fire of passion that drives them. They want to get to the thing. And now here we have, this is a less obvious match cut. It's still a bit of a match cut, like it's still sort of retaining some compositional elements, but because everything has now been established, we have now connected the characters to each other, we can now start doing cuts between the three scenes that don't have to be linked together by smooth visual flow in the same way that we started with. So we cut to this scene right here. Which there are some elements, like you can see the platform the Pantheon is standing on right here. It sort of roughly aligns with this bit right here. You can see like the way that the mountain sort of, like you can see the slope of the mountain here, roughly aligns with the slope of the rocks that fall down here. And you can see like this edge right here on the mountains there roughly aligns with this edge in the center of the shot right here. You can see this ridge where the portal is placed upon, the portal to the magical realm of Targon up above or something. Sort of roughly aligns with this little ridge here with those ice crystals. Like there's little elements that sort of match the cuts between the two scenes so that it doesn't feel too jarring. But now this is where the cutting can start to get more free, because the audience has now had established, okay, we have the ice scene, we have the desert scene, and then we have the mountain scene, and like we can swap between them and we all understand what's going on, why things are switching the way that they are. Another thing to talk about is also the color. So in Orn's Forge, the dominant colors are black, gray, brown, orange, and of course, hella red, right? Mostly red, like it's Fire of the Forge stuff. It's dark, it's sort of muggy. That's the vibe. Then we cut to the Freljord, and everything is just like, it's gray, it's blue, it's white. And those are like basically the only colors that are available to us here. Then we cut to Shurima, which is Well, it's a desert place. Now, you can shoot a desert area in much colder tones than this, but in order to establish the differentiation between the locations, we get this sort of yellowish filter over everything. Like, everything is sort of sandy brown, it's yellow, it's earth tones all over the place. Like, even the sky, like, if you take a color picker in Photoshop and you color pick any of this, there's not a lot of blue there. Like, there's a little bit, maybe a sort of slightly sky blue sort of peeking through here, but all these clouds, all of the skies, there's some shade of yellow, all of them. So, like, the color grading is doing a lot of the work of establishing, like, the differentiation between these locations. And then, of course, as we get to Pantheon, here we have, like, this sort of dark mountain in the sunset kind of vibe. Like, we have this very warm golden sun shining down over everything. But take a look at the other color tones that are present in the image. Like, for example, here, this right here behind him, that's all blue. Like, it's all blue. We have a little bit of like purple sort of worming its way into the image, so that just becomes especially apparent here. So, like, we have blue, we have purple, and purple is a lovely color because that's part of why the void is purple colored. It's a color that's just in visual language sort of universally denotes the supernatural in some ways. Like, purple, violet, sort of the colors that are sort of a mix between red and blue in that way. They tend to be things, oh, the supernatural, like that which is beyond human comprehension, magic, those sorts of things. That's a color that's very commonly associated with that kind of stuff, and also with things that are unnatural. So the Zerg in StarCraft, for example, or indeed the Void, as with Kaisa. And that's the color tone that's going on here. Like, we have blues, the same as we have in the Freljord, but it's much warmer blues, much more saturated. And we have earth tones and stuff like we have in Shurima, but these are, like, constantly cast in the light of this, like, bright sort of sunset orange, as well as the many, many hues of the grand skies above Targon. So that's all stuff that sort of just visually means that when we cut from this scene to this scene, we instantly know, okay, not the same place. These are completely disconnected locations. We don't have to think of this. Is this character approaching these two? No, because he's clearly in a completely different world. And, like, these guys aren't walking up to a mountain that if they climbed it, they would eventually run into the Freljord people, because that's clearly, like, visually you can just tell at a glance without knowing about the Freljord and Shurima and Targon and the Void and all of that, that these are entirely separated places. Anyway, moving on to the Winter's Claw making their way through the snow. We get a little shot of Olaf here, who desperately needs a new character design. My god. Did you know that Olaf isn't an Iceborn? It's true. He has no natural resistance to cold whatsoever, but here he is, shirtless, with a bit of fur on his back, trudging through the... Yeah, okay, fine, whatever. With a lovely shot of Sejuani sitting up here sort of waiting on her warriors to follow her up. And there's something interesting going on with that in relation to the lore. I'll get into it later. There's a particular shot that I want to talk about there. But yeah, Olaf, who desperately needs a new character design, being established as a secondary leader here. Like, he's a secondary important character. We've already sort of seen him in the background of Sejuani's establishing shot, but we need an extra shot here to go, oh, okay, it's like that. This guy is important. He needs to be the main character of a shot or two, where, like, he looks back at the camera and is like, oh wow, that guy has, like, arms like a tree trunk. He's huge. He looks different from the other guys, and he's probably special somehow. And then we get this, like, as he, like, looks up at Sejuani looks down at him. It's like, oh, okay, so he's like a second in command kind of thing. Like, he's probably important within the group, but not the leader. All of that to establish this. And then we establish the threat, which is Kerpow, and this lovely little thing of, like, we have a bit of a visual glitch here, but we have the lightning strike, which sort of just holds. Like, you can see how the lightning bolt, it doesn't vanish, it just kind of sits there and holds for a bit. And then we get this flash of black as Sejuani is backlit, and then, like, she turns around and is like, oh my god, here come the frickin' Ursine. And the Ursine are one point of complaint I have with this short, in that their character designs are kind of shitty. They're not very good. We'll get to that in just a second, but we get this shot of Sejuani, like, looking at them. Okay, we've established the threat. These are the bad guys. We need to fight them. Okay, here comes the action, probably. And again, my complaint is, like, why is Sejuani wearing eyeliner and war paint, I guess? But if she was wearing war paint, make it more interesting than just, like, normal makeup that any person would wear. Like, do something cool. As we cut to the action starting to take place here. We get Pantheon, who, by the way, one thing that's interesting about the shots with Pantheon especially, and the shots with a lot of the characters, take notice of how often they are framed as very, very small against the environments that they're interacting with. Here, for example, here's Sejuani, there's Olaf and the crew walking around like very, very tiny, huge environment. Like, these are very small people up against an overwhelming challenge. There's other ways to frame a shot like this. Like, even if you wanted, like, you could pull in a much closer on the characters and sort of be behind them looking up at the mountain. That would make them much larger in the frame and sort of emphasize their power and their capacity to overcome this challenge. But because we're pulled out so far and we see this enormous, like, unwelcoming, terrifying landscape, we get the sense of, like, these are very small people going up against very large odds, which is the same thing that happens with Talia and Kaisa. Very small people going up against very large odds. Like, whatever made that, okay, that's bad. Probably don't want to run into that. And same thing here. Very tiny people being assaulted by difficulty on all sides. Small people against large odds. And Pantheon, like, he's probably he gets to be the largest in frame, but he's still dwarfed by the thing that he's up against. And in the very next shot where we see him, tiny little Pantheon, huge, like, just absolutely enormous challenge lies before him. As the Solari come out of their hidey holes to challenge him. And this is where, like, maybe, I don't know, you could try and say, hey, I just want to, like, the portal. Like, we don't have to make a thing out of it. Can I just go? I'm an aspect. It's fine. I can just go past. But no, we have to do the Sparta thing. And he's like demonstratively stabbing his spear into the ground. And I do like the movement that he uses to do that, because, like, you see how he does it. Like, it's very, very smooth. But he whips the arm up, throws the spear, rotates his hand around it while letting go, catches it, and then boom. Slams it down. And as he slams it down, we get this ripple through the guards that I really quite like. As even, like, the whole camera shakes to emphasize, like, that stab into the ground. As, like, one lowers, the other lowers, the third lowers, the fourth, like, this little whoop, this little wave across them, which gives them a sense of, like, cohesion and coherency, like, that they all react sort of in concert with each other because they are a regimented unit of whatevers. Cutting back to Kaisa and Talia, here's the thing you'll notice. A little bit of a Dutch angle going on here. Now, a Dutch angle is, again, a film studies term, which basically just means, oh, the camera is, like, the horizon in the camera lens is not aligned with the horizon in the environment, right? So you can see the ground is tilted. And as a camera move, it's the sort of thing you do, like, if you want to imply instability, if you want to imply tension, danger, uncertainty, Dutch angles are good for that because they literally throw you off balance, right? So it's used here to emphasize that, okay, this crack that's running towards them there, that's bad, it's danger. Danger is coming towards them, and danger is going to find them as void monsters, Circe, Zerg, Tyranids from Warhammer, whatever you prefer. You can eat, like, you get this shot where, again, notice how Talia and Kaisa are framed as very small against a very, very large, overwhelming monster. The monster is bigger than them, obviously, but again, the camera is they're making a choice with the camera to keep it pulled back such that the monster becomes like an overwhelming presence literally looming over them, to which they must respond, which they do, in magnificent fashion. And this is where I curse motion blur. I hate motion blur in 3D animation. I hate it because it makes it harder for me to see what's going on when I sit here frame by framing my way through it. And I don't understand why 3D animation producers don't cater to my needs and wants, because I am obviously the core audience for these things. But regardless of my complaints with motion blur, which is bad and I hate it and stop using it, please, there are very legitimate reasons to use motion blur. It emulates the effects of rapid movement within a camera lens. It helps smooth out action. It helps make action feel more realistic in a lot of ways. It helps emulate the look that you get in movies and TV, which is part of the point here. Like I said, this thing is grounded in a more realistic presentation than a lot of the other League of Legends animation, and so you have this use of motion blur, this use of Gaussian blur, camera lens blur, to create an effect as though this is being filmed by a camera rather than being rendered by a computer, as Talia, my girl, gets a real angry expression on her face, grabs some ground, and goes, smack! Like, that's just like, wonk. Ooh, you're gonna feel that one in the morning. And it's excellent, because, like, again, we get this slow-mo thing. Like, we got this, like, a little bit of bullet time here as the monster pops out, and we get this moment to see, like, the scale of what they're up against. Like, he still seems to be falling slightly slowly through the air, right? Like, the monster as it's going towards them, and then yoink! I do like that. Like, here's a good use of motion blur. It's like, I've got her, I've donk! And then Kaisa doing her big dashy magic blasty thing. And here, like, oh, well, thank you for letting me know about Kill James Bond's new patron-only release. And here, again, motion blur, I hate it because this is fucking impossible to parse as a singular shot, but there is a lovely use of, like, you see how as she's dashing towards, how she's completely leaned off axis, like her center of gravity is somewhere well the hell over here. And this is not a way that a person should ever reasonably be able to stand, but, like, it sort of emphasizes the speed and power of her dash towards the beastie as she lands in a position that's calculated specifically to make her poke her ass out at the viewer. I think, like, this is a really weird action pose that I'm not really 100% on board, because this feels so much like an oopsie doopsie, I bent over forwards and presented my butt, that I feel like a leap or something would have been more dynamic and cool. But there is a reason for her to stop dead in her tracks rather than do it in, like, a smooth motion, which is, again, we need this moment right here, like these few frames before she actually shoots the thing, to sort of, like, because of all the fucking motion blur and all of the everything and all the particles that are flying around everywhere, we need this motion of relative stillness just for a second as the camera pushes in and zooms in on what's going on, to sort of parse, oh, okay, she's doing a thing like she's putting her hands out and blam, blasting him in the face. And then she turns around and we get this cut on movement as we see she's getting ready for a dash. We cut into, like, a camera following her along. That fucking ass, like, oh my god. This Kaisa's fucking character is like, why is fucking spandex ass thing? Why is she wearing void yoga pants? Like, why was that the anyway, not relevant right now. I've made that complaint 100 million times and people are tired of it, and I'm tired of making it. So let's move on from it with a little bit of cool visual effects, which is, like, she does the dash, and then we get this void after image following her along, which I think is very cool. As she steps on the back of this damn thing, as Talia is, like, floating rocks out of the ground to throw at the thing that's coming on over here, we get this lovely scene of the two collaborating very smoothly. Like, they work smoothly around each other. So the camera follows Kaisa. She does this very impressive looking leap, like, sort of cartwheeling over herself. And that's, like, this is way better than the shot before when she was just kind of pushing her ass out and shooting the thing. Where, like, she just this cartwheel over, boom, bit of lens flare, because, of course, this is a real camera that's definitely filming this thing for real. Boom, blasts the creature, lands head over heels, literally. There, pivots around to sort of, like, to sort of bring her other foot down, pivots up, as we get, like, a couple of like a really strong action pose from Talia here. So he's, like, slapping this thing with a rock, like, right in the stupid face. Yoink. Where, again, just, okay, you have to use motion blur, fine, but use less of it. Like, I want to be able to see these things, because that's a really nice, strong action pose from Talia. Like, I really like that dancer-like poise and posture she has as like, we see the camera the camera now centers on Talia and swings around using her as a pivot point, as we get Kaisa, like, doing her little super agile dashy thing, dashing around her friend and protecting her. Like, Talia sort of leans down in order to throw another rock, and then Kaisa uses that to dash over her back. Boom, blast this thing right through the head a couple of times. Nice. And then classic back-to-back, like, this is cool guys doing cool shit kind of thing, where you get, like, you really get the sense of collaboration between the, like, it's a dance where Kaisa is weaving around the things that Talia is doing, and they're sort of collaboratively taking down these monsters. And again, really love the texture work that unit image has done on Kai'Sa. Like, you see the capillaries sort of spreading underneath the skin of this void pod, whatever the hell it is, like the carapace thing and the leathery look that's going on it. Very good. I really like that. As, of course, now that they've defeated the minor threats, here comes the major threat, which is signaled by the literal ground. Like, literally the rug is being pulled out from under them, except instead of rug, it's ground. And again, like, a lovely application of Kai'Sa using her powers to, like, zip, zippity zippity. And I do like the way that this is rendered, which is, you can see the after image appears before she gets there. So it's like she designates a position and teleports there, essentially, sort of what it looks like. And then Talia just kind of does a dodge roll from Dark Souls to get out of it. And again, notice how the camera is conspicuously pulling back. Like, here, where they have defeated these threats, like here where they're, like, just kicking ass on these freaking Cersei, like, beating them left and right, we end on this shot. Boom. Which is the two of them being powerful. Like, this is the two of them being in charge. They're powerful. They've got this handle. They can beat these things. They ain't got a shot against them. No problem. Pushing on Kai'Sa with a badass look. But then, whoop, here comes a bigger threat. And the camera once again pulls out really far because big threat, small people, large odds, low chances. Which is the same thing that's going to be happening here because this is... yeah, and here... So, Ursine lightning strike thing called blah 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 thing, big chunk of ice fall down from mountain, lands on Olaf and just kind of breaks. And again, I want to stress, Olaf isn't iceborn. Like, he's not a special kind of magic person. There's literally nothing special about him except that he just can't seem to get himself killed no matter how hard he tries. He doesn't have any superpowers. So, like, this thing just landing on him and breaking is like, it's meant to be a badass moment that shows, okay, this guy is he's stronger and more powerful and cooler than all the other guys because he's a champion, right? You're supposed to be excited for him. But, like, that's not really within Olaf's power set as it exists in the lore. But, yeah, who cares? Power levels are bullshit anyway. The thing I want to talk about here, though, is this shot right here, which you see as these rocks and ice things are coming down from above, Sejuani very conspicuously in the background is saving one of her men from being crushed by this ice. And that's, again, lore-wise a little bit weird because the Winter's Claw, like, their whole deal is, like, either you're strong enough to beat everything and handle it, or else you're fucking dead and we don't care. Like, that's kind of the vibe of them, is like you know, you handle your own shit. Like, you gotta be strong enough. You can't rely on other people to save your ass or pull your ass out of the fire. And here we have Sejuani very conspicuously saving one of her men, which is kind of... Like, Sejuani literally murdered her own people because they were weak and they required food and she didn't want to feed them. That was the thing she did. That's who she is as a leader, is she's more than willing to sacrifice anyone who can't take care of themselves in order to provide better circumstances for the, air quotes, strong of her tribe. So it's a little weird that she's sort of taking time out of her busy combat schedule where there's enemies in front of her that she could be killing to save her own people. But that, again, like, this is not really... Much as I would like it to be, this is not really directed at me as a massive League of Legends lore nerd. It's directed at people who are like, oh, okay, this is the new League of Legends season. Why should I give a shit about this game? Well, come look at all this cool shit and look at Sejuani being cool and saving people and being heroic and stuff. Because if she just, like, let her people die, that would be like, well, why should I root for her? Like, she's clearly a bit of a shithead. Maybe these are the good guys. And this is where we get our first proper look at the Ursine, really, and I'm like, like, that's it? It's just like a normal dude, but he has a bare head and some claws, and that's like what they all are? That's a little bit lame, because, like, in the lore, again, this is not for lore nerds, but even then, like, the Ursine are like these horribly mutated shaman people who've been taken over by the spirit of the Great Bear and turned into monsters, essentially. Like not just a dude with a bear head, but like, oh, some parts of him is a bear and some parts of him isn't, and it's not the parts that you think. Like, they're supposed to be these sort of kind of horrifying creatures that are sort of fully dominated and overwhelmed with the sheer power of their patron deity. These are just, like, furries. Like, they're just dudes with really good fursuits. That's kind of... I wish they were a little bit more specifically monstrous and scary, rather than just being like, it's a buff dude with a bear head. Whoa. Like, that's not, as a fantasy monster goes, that's not really scary. And also, just as a character design thing, these are supposed to be the clear antagonists of the story. Like, they're supposed to be like, oh shit, like he's up against something big and scary and terrifying, and like, yeah, these things are dangerous and they do magic at her, but like, where I feel like the monstrousness could be emphasized more to make them, okay, these are scary monsters in the same way that the void monsters are scary monsters, rather than like just looking like furry characters, really, which is what's going on here. But lovely shot of Volibear hanging out up in the clouds, doing his thing. He's gonna come back later, so we'll look at him. But love the visual effects animation on the lightning as well. It's really good. And here you can see the stylization that's going on, because the lightning is not realistic lightning. Like, I probably don't need to tell you that. Like, electricity doesn't really work like this. This is magic, but also the way that it's rendered, the way that it's stylized, you can see it especially here. The way that it casts light and doesn't cast light is being very carefully manipulated in order to create a cinematic feeling, rather than do what actual lightning would actually do if you tried to film it, which is blow out the entire camera sensor. And it looks really cool. Like, I really do like the effects of it. And I do like the visual storytelling of, like, as he throws lightning bolts up to the sky for whatever reason, you get the sense, oh, okay, they're in service to, this is some kind of god or spirit or big monster that gives them their powers, something along the lines. Like, that visual storytelling is there, sort of giving that impression. Here's another interesting shot as we cut back to Pantheon's side of things, because, again, a little bit of a Dutch angle, but we are here fully inside of Pantheon's perspective. Like, this is filmed in first-person perspective from Pantheon's point of view, as we see these people, like, rushing towards him, and this guy trying to stab him. Now, imagine if the decision there had been reversed. Imagine that if instead of being inside Pantheon's perspective, seeing all these people coming at him, we were in these guys' perspectives, looking at Pantheon. So you had a shot that was positioned behind the guards, so you can see that there's 5 of you running at this one lone warrior who's just like walking towards you. What you would get from that shot immediately is the sense that Pantheon is the fucking Terminator, right? Like, you get the sense of, oh, these people are gonna get their shit rocked. They are all going to die because there are 5 people attacking one dude. We know how that ends. And that, again, would position Pantheon as a kind of scary, sort of antagonistic figure. He'd be this guy who's, like, arrived at this place and he's gonna completely kick these guys' shit in for no good goddamn reason. He's the bad guy. He's evil. He's doing violence with no justification. But because we are inside Pantheon's point of view, seeing these people come at him and try to kill him, we are placed in a position to sympathize with him, see him as the protagonist of the scene, and instead of going, oh god, these poor men are going to get brutalized, we're going to go, oh shit, he needs to defend himself. So he does. And again, fucking motion blur. Like, stop using motion blur. I want to see it. But yeah, like, big whack. Like, we see Pantheon, like, he moves in with a shield, dodges the forward strike, and then, like, you can see how, like, he's leaning his weight down on this leg. Like, you can see that he drops that knee down in order to get the leverage, and then he pushes out, like, schmack, and we get this excellent strong key pose, like, right here of, like, him, like, fully, like, extending and flexing his chest muscles as he's smacking this guy around like wet sandpaper. And then again, like, you see he plants his leg down. He swings the upper body around. He curls it up, like, builds up that tension, and then he unleashes that tension. Boom! It's like, holy. And you can see the model being broken here, right? So, because this is a fairly realistically rendered, like, again, it's not actually realism, but it has, like, a sort of grounded, realistic rendering. What you don't see a lot is cartoony effects like breaking the character model, squash and stretch. Like they're not really employed in a way that you would recognize, like, in a Disney movie, for example. But here, just for a split second, it is employed to emphasize the impact of what's happening, because this guy's entire chest gets caved in and he gets turned into a balloon. And you can see how, like, that snaps back into looking like a relatively normal human chest pretty much immediately. But there's just that one moment of completely just breaking the model, turning him into a rubber animal, like... as he, very sensibly decides to get knocked unconscious, and Pantheon whips around with an elbow. Like, these people have range advantage on him. How stupid are they? With an elbow, smack, knocks that person down. We get another strong pose, again emphasizing his chest, because that's the big thing about Pantheon as a character design piece. He has this big muscly chest that you can emphasize to sort of really put pop and power in his poses. Spin around, kaboom. Again, can't fucking see anything that's fucking happening here, which would be nice if we could see what is happening, but all the fucking motion blur. Smacking that guy into a pillar. They're probably not dead, but he sure as hell has kicked their ass. And now, having defeated the minions, here comes the boss of the level, Leona, showing up as a ray of sunlight blasting out of the clouds right up here. Hey, there she is. And a lovely use of her shield. Like, as it opens up and you see, like, her face framed within it, which I think is a very clever way to do that. And you can see, like, Pantheon is literally, like, within this ray of sunlight. She's basically using E on him, essentially. This ray of sunlight with darkness all around. Like, she's literally spotlighting in on him. And we see him sort of, like... Again, you can see him, like, he puts a foot out to the side, drops his weight down. Boom. And then, bong! Big explosion of something power or other, which is expressed in some interesting ways. Like, just, it literally have these lens distortions happening in the camera. Like, light is literally being bent around these little pockets of sheer force. Like, that are bending the light. Which is blasting out of these two aspect-empowered people. Clashing. And here, Pantheon's toes, in case you should be curious about those. I know some people in the comments are gonna be. As he gets pushed back by the blow, like sliding over the thing, which, by the way, must, like, just fucking tear the skin off the soles of his feet. Landing in this very strong combat-ready pose. Like, you don't get the sense here that Pantheon is off balance, that he's been knocked down or in any way pressured, just that he's been pushed back for a second. As Leona levels the big, glowy, fiery sun sword that she's got. And here, again, a little bit of character design commentary, because Leona is one of the other characters who I've, like, ragged on rather relentlessly over the years because her character design is stupid. It's like, it's not good. It's just not good. I'm sorry. It's iconic, sure. It sticks around because she's looked like this for so long that people have grown attached to it, regardless of its quality. That's a normal thing that happens. But it's ass. It is bad. Her armor design is terrible. Her character design is not good. Modern Solari armor designs within the lore are a lot better. And again, there seems to have been some consciousness of this fact at Unit Image, or indeed at Riot, because they've gone, okay, she has this stupid fucking very bad, not, like, just absolutely terrible armor on her character design. We have to find some way to make it not look stupid in our realistically rendered trailer thing. What the fuck are we gonna do? Well, we're gonna take this, like, this suit, whatever the hell she's wearing. I'm getting emails left and right now. That's not what I need. This suit of whatever that she's wearing, cloth, whoever, like, it's complete. We don't know what the fuck it is when we look at her actual character design. But okay, we're gonna go. Okay, this is probably like heavy leather, like multiple layers of like cured leather hide armor stuff, something like that. That actually looks like it might stop a dagger or something. And we're gonna put that on her. And then the fucking metal bra, okay, fine, but we're gonna strap it around her properly so that it looks like it's actually attached to her and not just magnetically sitting on top of her titties. And we're gonna sort of smooth out the shapes a little bit, make it look like maybe if you hit that with a sword, it would protect her a little bit or something. And we're gonna take these streamers, like these things right here. In her base character design, those are metal. Like, unambiguously, those are metal. They're rendered exactly the same way as everything else. But we're gonna go, okay, if she had metal there, she couldn't bend over. Like, neither forwards nor backwards, and that would be really stupid because she needs to be able to move. So we're going to turn those into cloth, and they have little stitchings on them, and they're like, oh, they're gold colored, but they're not metal. So we're just, like, you can see the designers are like, okay, fuck, we have to make this stupid thing work. We have to work around it. All right, fuck. Like, you can see them racking their brains to make this design make any kind of physical sense. And they've done a good job. Like, this is a lot better than she looks in game right now, but my god, my girl deserves a better set of armor. My god. Get to that. Anyway, really strong hero pose. Yet another one for the wallpaper files if you want to download the 4K version. I want to note the excellent edge lighting on Leona's hair right here, like the strong lighting from behind, like blasting through the strands of her hair, giving this like lovely white-edged effect that I think is really cool. That's really well done. And then Pantheon meeting the challenge with his large... It's somewhat ambiguous in the various designs that Pantheon has, whether or not he has this massive rug of chest hair on him. They seem to have settled on that he does, but it's certainly not present in his splash art, which has led to my headcanon that Atreus, this guy, like the human person, has absolutely no personal grooming routine whatsoever, but Pantheon, the aspect of war, who used to possess him, is really into manscaping. But here we get, like, the escalation of the stakes, right? Like, because we began the sequence of Pantheon against these soldiers with him very, very pointedly putting his spear down, being like, I don't want to hurt you. Like, it was both a gesture of, like, I don't want to hurt you, but also, I don't need this. I can kick your ass without it. But here comes a new challenger, and so the spear has to come out of the ground because he knows that he's up against, like, some serious shit here. And speaking of being up against some serious shit, Talia, perhaps somewhat unwisely stepping over the edge of this big giant hole in the ground where you can see this purple haze from down within it beginning to sort of manifest itself along the edges, and this purple starting to creep in along the corners of the image over here as the queen herself, well, maybe not so much the queen, rek'sai, makes her presence known. Now, rek'sai is the mother of the sersai, which are the monsters that they've already killed. She's not coming at them because she cares about her children very much. She doesn't. But she used to be the Void Queen character, sort of, in League of Legends. Like, she was very specifically like a mother, like a hive mother thing, like an alien queen character, sort of in that sense. But she's getting replaced in that role by the new Void champion, at least the way that it looks right now. So it's interesting, like, I expected when this thing was released that Talia and Kai'Sa we were going to get a preview of the next Void champion, like that was going to be what they were up against here. But no, instead, they've chosen to make it our good old well-known Queen rek'sai, making her presence known. And I do like the way that rek'sai moves in this thing. Like, I like the way that she proceeds forward. Well, like, you can see, like, first comes the claw, she grabs onto the side of the wall, but then you get, like, this little bit of her, like, insectoid legs scuttling along up the wall as we move in. As we do a really hard cut to Leona and Pantheon doing a fighting. With... Again, like, I'm not really convinced by this as a strike as much, because, like, this doesn't feel like a serious strike from Leona. Like, she's just kind of flailing her sword forward at the guy and leaving herself really vulnerable here, like, after it's sort of deflected by his shield, which he sort of tries to respond to, and then we get, like, a strong pose. Like, this is a really strong fighting pose, where this is a little bit more like she's just kind of standing there with her, like, her elbow up, and then the sword kind of falls down. It's not really a strong combat animation pose there, but then the next bit here, like when he's bringing the spear in and she whacks it away, that's really strong. Like, that's a really, you can see the line going through her body with, like, again, chest forward, arms back, like a powerful forward motion going through her, which then leads into another clash, Pantheon being driven back, and another really strong pose. I really like this one. It's not, like, pretty vulnerable, like, he could just poke his spear out and, like, get her through the ribs, but smashes against the shield, and then we get this moment of, like, contested power, where Pantheon is trying to push back against her. Manages to win the clash, and then we get, like, a mirror back to what was done to Atreus before, or Pantheon. I'll just call him Pantheon. Whereas he's striking down against her, and there's another clash of power and push. We get this, like, just like we saw Pantheon's feet sliding through the dirt as he was driven back, we see Leona's as well. And another little excellent character design decision, which is to get rid of her fucking stiletto heels. Yeah, her original design has, like, 6-inch stiletto heels on the shoes, which is... it's so frustrating and dumb, but here they've gone, okay, we can keep the heels, I guess. We can't get rid of them because they're part of the character design, but we can at least make them, like, oh, she could plausibly stand on those in rough terrain of some sorts, like she might need to do on a battlefield. So that's good. That's nice, like, makes the shoes make a little bit more sense. Although one thing that kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to me is, like, Pantheon, like, he jumps into the air, stabs with the sword, she meets it with her sword, holds it back, and then how is he still, like, is he literally holding himself up in the air? Is he not supposed to land? Like, shouldn't the spear pivot downwards? But no, it just keeps pushing, as though he's floating in the air, pushing at her. Which is probably one of those visual decisions of, like, okay, but if we did the thing of, like, where the spear pivots down and then he pushes forward, it's like, that might be visually confusing. It's much more simple just to have him be in the air pushing at her, and then we just sort of, he's not in frame, he doesn't need to land, we just do the push in order to do the storytelling. Which is like, that's fine. It was just one of those things I noticed where it's like, it implies that Pantheon is hovering, which I like. Again, here we see the use of like a big open chest as a wind up to power. You can see how it's literally inflating as the Ursine here is doing his big throwing a thunder around. And again, small people up against very large odds as the lightning bolts come down on Sejuani and her band, going badoom, and we get another slow motion shot as she doesn't seem to get hit, but I guess it sort of just kind of lands near them, and that's kind of enough to throw them around. And these lead into what is termed, in terms of visual storytelling, the all is lost moment, or the hero's lowest point. Like, we have a very simple 3-act structure going on in this thing. That's what Orn is. He's the framing device for the 3-act structure of this short as it progresses, because we start with the fire of passion as the characters go on to their quest, then they encounter their resistance and their biggest problems as Pantheon and Leona are fighting, realize all of a sudden, like, hey, wait a minute, something else is going on here. So, like, you can see Leona, like, and this is very well animated, by the way, like, as she's clashing with Pantheon, like, it's just full-on rage mode, like, showing the teeth. You can see, like, the nose is pulled back, this look of, like, anger and, like, disgust, almost. But then she notices, like, you can see, like, she senses that something else is going on here. So the eyebrows unknit. You can see the lines disappear from her face, like the upper part of her face loses tension. And they break free of the clash, and she's still, like, I love this pose as well. Like, this is a really strong, like, she, like, beats away his sword and goes, rah! Like, don't fucking mess with me. I need to see what's behind me. Fuck off for a second. Like, checks that he's not going to attack her, and then she turns to raise her shield against whatever the hell the new thing is that's coming at them, which turns out to be whatever that is. We don't know. It might be some kind of void attack. It might just be a shooting star. Like, they happen, up there on Targon. Like, shooting stars just happen sometimes. We don't know exactly what it is, but it's probably some kind of bad thing, which Pantheon probably climbed the mountain in order to prevent, we guess, sorta, maybe, as he gets pretty decisively owned by that. Boom. And you can see Leona, like, they're looking after him. Like, as he gets hit, she's pivoting to look after him as he gets knocked pretty decisively off the mountain. And here we return to Orn for the second time, or for the first time we return to him, but he's here for the second time, as he takes this fire of passion, like this blade, like this fiery blade of passion, and it quenches. He quenches it in his forge, and you see the fire go out of it. It goes dark, like it begins to sort of smoke. The fire has been quenched inside them. Visual storytelling. It's the metaphor for the thing that's happening, which is that the fire is going out. The heroes are at their lowest point, but of course, that lowest point is the thing that will forge them into true heroes because of the way that they respond to being beaten down. And again, like, you can see the makeup that's caked onto his face. You can see how there's this little gap in it. Like, they're like, just the sheer level of detail that they're using in this goddamn animation is fantastic. But Pantheon, very appropriately, has been cast to the site of some forgotten ancient battlefield far below, which in terms of the lore might be the battlefield, might be the place that he was cast down to last time he was on Targon, where he got possessed by Viego and raised an army of ghouls, and now he's... But it's more thematic to Pantheon. Pantheon is a warrior who has risen from 100 battlefields of defeat. And he's kind of traumatized by it, understandably. He's got some I mean, I don't want to diagnose him, but like it's implied to be a sort of PTSD sort of thing, trauma going on. And now here, once again, you can see, like, he realizes he's found himself the lone survivor on a battlefield again. Which doesn't sit well with him. And so once again, we repeat the motif. Very small people up against very large odds. Same thing here. This is the lowest point for Sejuani as she pokes her head back out of the snow and sees her people falling all around her. Everything seems to be going straight to hell. This is the worst thing that could possibly happen. And here Talia and Kaisa looking down at rek'sai coming up at them. And Kaisa looks over at Talia and goes like, well, shit, this is bad. I need to do something about this. Talia looks over at her. We can probably beat her together, right? Kaisa, right? And you see the realization in her eyes as she realizes what Kaisa has decided that she's about to do. And she's like, oh no, she's gonna do a self-sacrifice thing, isn't she? Oh no, it's gonna be the best possible choice, isn't it? God damn it. And then there's Pantheon, just an iconic little shot of him being the only thing that's lit in an otherwise dark battlefield as the skies are literally falling around him, which then also becomes the moment of heroic, what's the word I'm looking for? Surmounting? Triumph? Overcoming? It's the moment of overcoming where, here's all the bad stuff that's happening. This is the hero's lowest point. But this is then also the moment when they decide to get up off their feet and fucking do something about it. So we get this cool-ass shot of Sejuani, no helmet, no nothing, no head protection whatsoever, which is not... Your helmet is right there. Health and safety is important, but just walking off alone to face the threat. And again, the same thing with Kaisa, doing the same thing of okay, well, I know what I must do, and I have the strength to do it, so here comes rek'sai. And again, I love the way she moves. You can see, she's kind of flailing her way up. This is not, measured, sensible thinking climbing. She's not looking for handhold. It's more I have claws, fuck the rock, I'm just gonna drag myself up out of it. And she's just kind of pulling herself up, and as she reaches the lip, you can see she's sort of crouches her body down, she tenses up, builds that tension, and headbutts her way right out of the ground. Her favorite move. And again, small people against very large odds, against huge challenges. Reinforcing that visual language over and over again. But here, again, there's also a moment of competency. We go from this smallness and overwhelming to filling the entire screen with Talia's emotion at seeing what Kaisa is about to do, filling the entire screen with Kaisa in a moment of her fully unleashed power as she extends her pod things and blasts rek'sai with everything she's got. And I do love, here's another lovely animation moment from rek'sai, as Kaisa's blasting her and she just doesn't care. She's yeah, fucking, this is you haven't built enough AD items to hurt me. And you can see she extends her, you can see she's just grasping for her prey, and again you get this sense of this completely irrational thing, this beastly irrational thing that doesn't think, that doesn't care, that doesn't have any self-preservation instincts even, that just only is driven by this instinct to consume. Snapping her jaws at a thing she can't reach, just in case she might be able to catch a little tasty morsel of flesh or whatever. And we even go inside rek'sai's perspective a little bit, coming between her. You can see her grasping with her claws for Kaisa as she does another couple of blasts, flying down, finally managing to affect rek'sai a little bit, who goes oh god damn it, right in the face. Catches herself, and then again, no regards for safety or self-preservation whatsoever, just launches herself deeper into the hole. And then we cut again to me cursing motion blur with every fiber of my being, because I would really like to see this better, but some excellent expressions on Sejuani as you can see here, there, that tension, where you can see she presses her lips and she clenches the jaw, she's pulling the lips in, and fully leaning into this huge sweeping motion with the flail, and you can see how the whole body is rotating around itself, giving us these lovely strong power poses as she's flailing around, whacking the other guy with the handle of the thing right through the lightning storm. And then yes, again, excellent. Because again, you can see, here again, I think was a little moment of breaking the model just a little bit. It's hard to tell without the fucking motion blur. Breaking the model just a little bit to sort of emphasize the sheer power of the move, and just to further emphasize the power of what she's doing. Here, they also, like, have a convenient lightning strike. Like, the lightning strikes just as she smacks this guy in the face and, like, yeets him. Absolutely fucking yeets his ass. And then you see, like, Volibear once again out of the clouds, this entity that she's up against, this god, looking down on her, literally looking down on her, and her being like, fuck you! Because Sejuani is not about to take any shit from nobody. So this is the moment of transcendence. That was the word I was looking for, transcendence. This is the moment of heroic transcendence as the hero finds the strength within themselves to overcome their challenges, rekindle, in Pantheon's case, quite literally, the fire of passion, and launch themselves at their challenge with renewed power. And Talia is doing the same thing here. And I, by the way, in more hand animation gushing here, because the first thing she's doing, right, like, she's force pulling at the wall here, like, trying to drag this statue out of the thing. So you get this thing of, like, you can see how she's literally grasping with her fingers as though she's grabbing onto something invisible, and then, like, dragging at it, pulling at it. But pay attention to what this hand, actually, let me zoom in on it a little bit later. This hand, like, pay attention to as she's pulling, how this hand slowly begins to rotate around its axis. Like, you can see them shuddering with the effort. It rotates around its axis, and you can see how, like, she's slowly pivoting around her hips, moving those shoulders over. Like, you can see she's trying to lead with the head, like she's pulling her head forward, like she's almost having to drag her body behind her. And then as we turn, as she finally gets a grip on the thing and, like, pulls it out of the wall, see how, like, the hand fully rotates from, like, almost from a position that's more like she's pulling a rope to a position that's more like she's sort of throwing something end over end, right? Like, she's creating this pivot point, and then her upper claw hand here, like a clawed hand, like this claw pose with the hand, rotates over that pivot point as she brings the statue down. Kerschmack! With excellent precision right on top of the remaining rek'sai. And then Pantheon, again, his eyes being very important to Pantheon. Like, you might have noticed over the course of the scenes with Pantheon that over and over again we return to his eyes. This is also sort of a motif generally for the thing, like the fire in the eyes, the passion, like the eyes are the window to the soul and all that. But Pantheon especially has that as he gathers power to himself. And this is something I should talk about, by the way, usually the effects animation on that. This right here, what I really like about that is it seems to have a thematic function, because he's landed on this battlefield of broken warriors, right? Like, there's no corpses, but we get the sense that this is a place where a lot of people have been buried and left for the crows. And it's almost as though he's, like, drawing in the ghosts of the dead, like the power of those who have come before him and have fallen. And that for Pantheon is, like, very, very appropriate for his lore. Like, that is what drives him, is the fact that there are people who have gone before him and failed, and he has made the decision that that will not be him. So he pulls in, like, basically the spirits of those who have fallen before him, empower him, and then we get, boom, this. Like, it's one frame from here, boom. As he explodes, like, the power, the shockwave blasts away the fog. So, like, we get this sense of, like, blasting away the mists of doubt, blasting away unclearness, uncertainty, and we get the moment of ascension, like the moment of transcendence, of overcoming, when he blasts off to, not really sure what, like, just fuck the stars, like, or fight them. And we cut back to Olaf owning the hell out of some Ursine himself as well, because him be a badass. As the Winter's Claw managing to pick themselves up, Bristle comes over, Sejuani gets a cool leap, like, this is a really cool leap, by the way, mounting back onto her mount, and everyone's like, yeah, fuck it, we're gonna go and do it, because everyone has had that moment of transcendence, of overcoming. And the fact that all of the Winter's Claw is with her, or maybe some of them are dead, who knows, but the fact that they're with her, again, visual storytelling, that Sejuani, part of her transcendence is to be a leader of them, right? She leads by example. She gets up first and starts fighting first, and then everyone else follows because she leads the Winter's Claw. This is why she's their leader. Like, that's what's being shown here. As she gets this lovely, and again, really wish the motion blur and the flashing wouldn't mess with it, but this lovely leap as she grabs onto his back, right? And you can see how the model, I think, again, they're doing a little bit of sneaky stretching, like stretching the model a little bit further than they're actually supposed to go. But as she grabs on and then pushes off with her legs and, like, sort of leapfrogs up onto his back in a way that, like, really works for me. Pulling out the bolus, hey, remembering that she has other abilities. That's nice. And then we have here, like, I don't know that this is, like, the specific Ursine that challenged her, but, like, freezing them, and then she literally smashes through the challenge that is before her. Like, she literally shatters the challenge, the roadblock, the thing that's preventing her from doing what she wants to do. Again, visual storytelling. And it works pretty damn well. Here we have Kaisa, like, just continuing to do the thing, continuing to fuck with rek'sai, turning, looking into the yawning maw of the abyss, the place that she's about to go, and again, it's a silly thing to take off your helmet. It's a bad idea, health and safety, but it makes sense as a bit of visual storytelling because Kaisa is looking the challenge right in the eyes. Like, she's facing it literally head on, literally head first. And so here we see the fire of passion restored within this magical blade that Ornn has forged, stabs it into the ground. The hero has been forged. The challenge has been overcome. Like, we've gone through our 3-act structure mediated by Ornn essentially as a storyteller. And, like, the weapon has been forged, and now the whatever happens next is ready to happen next. And he really does look good, doesn't he? People are sort of assuming that Ornn is probably going to be coming to Legends of Runeterra, and I hope so, because he's one of my favorite champions, and I really want him to be in more things. Right. Was that everything? Did I get everything? I probably didn't get everything. Let me know what I didn't get down in the comments, I suppose. My god, it's good to be back. Thank you to the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare, as you probably know, is an online learning platform hosting a huge number of videos from people sharing their skills and learning from each other. Skillshare wants to help make 2022 a year of learning, which is convenient for me because I've got a few things to learn. Which is why I've been looking at Jordi van de Put's series on advanced video editing with Premiere Pro. I've worked in this program for years now, but because I'm self-taught, a lot of how it functions and most of the effective ways to do things kind of elude me, or I've learned to do them the wrong way. And this class is getting my production a bit more on the right track, I think, which I hope is eventually going to translate into even better looking videos. If you want to improve one of your own skills, the first 1,000 people who use the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare Premium, and you can start learning today. Oh, right, an outro. I almost forgot I had to record one of those things. Hi. Thanks for watching the video. As you can tell, I'm a little bit high energy, a little bit hype, and a little bit sort of in a weird headspace. I'm just kind of excited to get to make videos again, but I'm also overwhelmed with the sheer thought of just how many goddamn videos I have to make because I've missed out on stuff. Anyway, we're starting with Bloodborne. That's the first video I'm making. Just finishing up Bloodborne so that it's ready for Elden Ring, and then from there, God knows, like the new Void Champion for League of Legends is gonna get revealed. I'm probably gonna want to talk about them. I don't know, man. I have a new place. I have an office. It's exciting. I'm very happy. But video, yes, thank you. Watching for doing that. Like, comment, subscribe, I guess. Follow my vlog channel if you want life updates on the thing that's happening to me. You don't have to care though. I have a Patreon, a merchandise store, a tip jar. I have a shorts channel. I have a Let's Play channel. You can go check those things out if you want to. And if you don't want to, you absolutely do not have to. Thank you very much for watching. Remember still to wear masks and wash your hands. Take such vaccines as are necessary, and it seems like quite a few of them are going to be necessary, and try to act with solidarity towards those who are worse off than yourself.